Hi, Joshua. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, good to be here
Nice to meet you.
too.
I'm sure Jamie will be on her way soon. Well,
Yep.
we'll get started. I've got some fun stuff for us to chat about today, and I know several of you guys are going to catch the replays because you've told me you are. Um, so what I'm most excited to talk about is really that healing is possible. And before I go there, I wanted to say, if you're wondering what my funky glasses are doing, I actually got a brain and eye injury. So this is part of my healing process, is they're there to block out light to give my brain a break so that my injury can heal. So you're going to stare at me with my funny taped glasses today. I'm getting used to it. So people just look at me funny now, and I'm like, what are you looking at me funny for? But it's good to be here, and I'm healing well, and it's good. The recovery is on its way. So my story is, I used to be bedridden for years, actually, with genetic illnesses that the doctors, first of all, didn't test for and didn't tell me about. An autoimmune disease that the regular doctors didn't test for and didn't tell me about. They just said, well, your labs look normal, but they didn't run the proper testing. And also environmental illness. So I lived on a Superfund site for a while, which means that it was basically I was in an area that was designated as like toxic, right? Like the wells were shut down. You weren't supposed to drink the water from the wells. So all of them were closed. And it was a toxic overspill from a uranium mine that's close to us. So I was chocked full of heavy metals and a bunch of other things that I wasn't able to detox and process properly. And so through my journey, I tried conventional medicine. The doctors didn't know what was wrong. They kind of thought I was making it up. Welcome, Jamie. I went into holistic alternative medicines because I wasn't okay. Clearly, I wasn't normal. And so I wanted to look a little deeper and go into some other avenues. And that's where we actually ran the proper testing and found out I had an autoimmune disease and I had genetic illnesses and I had environmental toxicity. And so piece by piece, we started, trying to address those with different tools, different modalities, different diets and cleanses, different herbs, all the things. And I was in that arena of holistic healthcare for many, many years, over a decade. Hi, Amber. Welcome.
Hey.
So glad to have you. I'm doing the
Yes.
brief overview on my story.
I love it.
So, it started to dawn on me, gosh, this is a lot of work just to stay well. Like, at what point does it end? Because it kind of just kept rabbit holing into these different areas, and then you learn about water purity. And so it's okay, I'll get a water purifier. And then you learn about, oh my gosh, the air I'm breathing is toxic. And I just kept doing all of these things, but I still had symptoms pop up from time to time. And it's like, what now? Like, what am I reacting to now? Like, I can't take anything else out, and I can't, how many more supplements can I take? And so it was starting to hit me deeply that this wasn't me being healthy. This wasn't me in a healthy lifestyle. This was me managing my symptoms. And I knew someone who had actually gotten rid of about 5 autoimmune diseases, I think maybe up to 7, if I remember correctly. And they were there eating gluten and they weren't taking supplements. They were like doing all of this normal stuff. And instead of being really excited about that could be possible for me, I actually was very cynical and bit resigned. And what I said to myself in my own head was, yeah, just wait. That's not sustainable. She can't do that. That's not possible, right? And so I figured, well, she's in remission for now. Like, just wait. At some point, she's going to crash. And, so years went by and it started dawning on me, more deeply. Oh my goodness, she is healthy and I am not. Who's the one missing something here? And so I really started searching what is another way? What am I missing? What is a new path to healing that I don't even know I don't know? And I'm so grateful that I did. It was very humbling because at the time I had a functional medicine practice. I was seen as a health guru. I was fixing all these people with all these things, but I noticed they'd get better, then they'd get worse, then they'd get better, then they'd flare up. And it was like, what are we missing? So it was scary. It took a lot of courage. It was very humbling for me to say, if I am not healthy, I don't know how to teach health. What I'm teaching is managing symptoms, and that scared me so much to say that, because I didn't even know what I was going to find or how I was going to change what I was teaching clients. But it was worth it because I was sick of band-aiding the problem, and I was sick of all of us running around in circles, and I certainly was sick of teaching clients to do the same thing once it was so obvious to me that we weren't actually addressing the root cause. So long story short, within 12 weeks of regulating my nervous system, which is really the key that I found that I was missing, my labs returned to normal after over a decade, decades, and I was able to stop my supplements, and my food allergies went away, and I was able to eat real foods, and I no longer reacted to the chemicals and scents and perfumes that I was reacting to previously. And it was remarkable. And so I've never been the same since. And this is what I love to teach people. Yay! So, so that's it. So I want to back up and I want to share with you guys, how did I get there? And most importantly, what is this piece of information regarding the nervous system that allowed me to go, oh my gosh, that makes sense? Because I no longer see symptoms the same. I no longer see my chronic illnesses the same. I no longer see all of health the same. And I don't see my body as broken, and I don't see my body as like, just betraying me and untrustworthy. Like, I don't know what's happening. I now understand. I have a new understanding of my body's physiology and biology and what it's doing. And so even if I have a flare up, which is very, very rare, maybe twice a year, which is huge to be able to say that, I can within minutes understand, oh, something offset my nervous system. What was that? I find it. I work through it. I get my nervous system re-regulated and my symptoms go away. So I'm not freaking out. I'm not scared that maybe it's cancer. It's like we all have PTSD if we have chronic illness. We're like, oh no, what's wrong now? And how bad is it? And how long am I going to be flared up? And do I need to do the juice fast, or do I need to pop 12 turmeric capsules? Like, what do I need to do to get my body back in alignment? And now I don't do that out here. I do that in here because I understand what my body's telling me. And that was really the missing piece. So all of that to say, I think of working with health in 3 different categories. You've got your body, you have your brain and nervous system, and you have your unconscious parts of your brain and like your perception and your mind and all of that. So in our body, that's like the hardware. So you think of your computer monitor or your mouse or your keyboard, like it's the hardware. But hardware doesn't work at all. It's just a pile of technology unless if there's software running it. And so the brain and nervous system is the software that's actually connecting, what needs to happen to the hardware. So it's all the softwares and programs that are running constantly. And we'll talk about that. But there's one deeper level, which is what's controlling the software. Who's the one installing the software, and who decided what software needed installed? It's like, what is programming our brain and nervous system to be in the patterns that they're in? And for all of us who have chronic illness or chronic symptoms or even PTSD and post-trauma issues, we know there's something misfiring that's causing us to not function at optimal capacity. And that's where the key is. So in the body, this is where pretty much all conventional medicine works, and most holistic and alternative forms of medicine work. They're working on the body. And when we're relying on tools to support the body, there's really only 4 categories that we have to do so. So we can stimulate body function with herbs, with nutrients, with modalities, and other things. We can suppress a body's function with all those same tools. We can provide a substance to the body, and we can take substances out of the body. So regardless of what method, modality, program, system, tool that we have, we are manipulating the body. Now, I'm so grateful that we can, and integrative and holistic medicines have so many more tools available, I feel like, than the conventional medicine models, but sometimes they're limited. And so either people use those methods and modalities and they manipulate the body, they fix whatever wasn't working, and poof, you're good to go. Like it's done, it's resolved. Your body is working the way that it should. But for so many people, and I would say all with chronic illness, all the people with chronic illnesses and chronic symptoms, if you have to keep using a tool, if you have to keep manipulating a body in those 4 ways, that is a sign that there is something that's not working in your body. So you're not getting fully healthy, you're having symptoms. And you're having ongoing symptoms, and those require ongoing management. So this is where I had tried, I once made a list and it was over 100 things, from the diets to the chiropractor to the body workers to psychological modalities, dozens of them. I tried so many things, and it was like some of the tools did work some of the time. At that point I wasn't bedridden, so it was obviously working in miraculous ways, but the amount of things I had to do to continue to maintain my health was just not sustainable. And so that's where I sought a different, path. So really it was, okay, well, what's controlling my body? I can manipulate my body, or I can find what's the software behind what my body is doing. Why am I not detoxing these heavy metals? Nobody else in my house got sick, but I did. So that means heavy metals, while they're not good for you, they're not the problem. It's my inability to detox and process them that are the problem. So, same with food allergies. It's like somebody else can eat that same food and be totally fine, but for me, it knocks me on my butt and gives me so much pain and digestive issues and headaches and skin problems, all the things. And so that's showing me it's not the food that's the common denominator, it's my system that is unable to process it. So what is controlling my body? Our brain and nervous system. And the dots were starting to connect for me, because even in anatomy and physiology, we learn that our nervous system monitors and controls every function in our body all the time. It's responsible for it. And if there's homeostasis, fancy word for everything's working the way it should, all the biochemical things are balanced and even and working the right way. If there's homeostasis, there's no symptoms, because the nervous system goes, check, everything's good. It's kind of like a little factory worker, that's checking all the different parts of your body. Check, that's working, check, we're good there. Check, no breakdowns, we're all good. But if the nervous system detects an imbalance, something that's not working the way optimally in our body, it will work to create a symptom to alert us of that. So it's when I first read this so many years ago, 14 years ago, in school, I remember calling my mother up on the phone being like, listen to this, because it just was like, wait, what? The nervous system is creating symptoms? That means it's not an accident, and it's by intelligent design, and our nervous system knows exactly what it's doing. Can we learn more about this? But no, it was like one-liner in an anatomy and physiology textbook, and that's it. Nobody ever talked about it again. So this was coming back to my mind, my memory, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Everybody we've ever worked with who has chronic illness, 100% of them, we have seen they were in sympathetic dominance. So let's review our terms here. Your nervous system has 2 branches, more than that, but we're going to talk about 2. One side is like, this gets turned on when you need to run away from a bear. This is called the sympathetic nervous system. I think it's SNS. I think S for stress. It's the stress nervous system. It's fight or flight. It's freeze or fawn. It's like trauma or survival. And we all have this system, and most of us are living in it. But if you have chronic illness or symptoms, you certainly, it's like that system is turned on and it's shut off the other system. So the other side, they work like a teeter-totter. It's parasympathetic nervous system. I think P for peace. It's the peace nervous system. It's known as the resting and digesting. It's known as the detox. It's known as the growth and the repair. And we're talking cellular growth and repair. So it started getting me to think rationally. Our bodies replace themselves every 7 years. And 7 is because bones take the longest. Your digestive tract replaces itself with brand new cells within 30 days. So, if we get a brand new digestive tract in every 30 days, there should be no logical reason for a chronic digestive disorder. Even further, in functional medicine, one of the first systems we learn to address in functional medicine training is the digestive system, because all systems rely on a digestive tract. And 80% of your immune system is there, and so much happens there. So why did we find leaky gut and digestive imbalances also in everyone with chronic illness? It just wasn't adding up, unless if the nervous system being in fight or flight, the stress mode, was the cause of all the rest of our body not being able to self-repair, not being able to grow and produce new healthy cells. But instead, we're producing cells that even in the DNA of the cell was programmed to survive, not to receive nourishment, not to have good, healthy metabolism and energy levels, and as a whole body, when we are in sympathetic dominance, we produce stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline, and that's flooding our system. And so we burn through so many more nutrients. We require so many more B vitamins and minerals and proteins and fats when we're in sympathetic overdrive, because that's how our body works. And so we turn on survival and we shut off self-repair. Our blood flow goes not in our visceral organs where we're supposed to do all these important functions like produce hormones and digest our food and detox toxic chemicals. And so all our organs are in our viscera, and the blood flow goes away from the viscera to our muscles. Why? So we can run away from the bear. That's what happens in survival mode. Also, our blood flow goes away from rational thinking brain, where we're calm, we feel like everything's going to be okay. I always say it's vacation mode. It's like, everything's done for right now. I can just be. That's not where our blood flow is in our brain in the sympathetic nervous system. It goes to the reflex centers. So not only do we become intellectually more dumb, right? We can't see the big picture. We tunnel vision, symbolically and literally. We tunnel vision on these problems and we go into reaction mode. And so most people in stress mode, if you look at their lives, it's like there's always a breakdown or a problem. And even the things they think they're doing to get ahead of the problem or fix the problem or address the problem is kind of like a sabotage process. So it's a stress spiral when we're in fight or flight. Whereas when we get to that calm, quiet space and we know we're okay, and we can like think and get perspective. So we start making better decisions that end up avoiding more stress. So looking at this, it made so much sense to me. We used to have a pulse ox monitor. It's like what the doctor puts on your finger to monitor your oxygen levels and your heart rate. And we had a special one. It was like very, very expensive. I think it was like $12,000. It was a class 2 FDA approved medical device. Anyway, it was really cool. We had it in our office and we would use it on people, and it would actually show us on a scale how active the sympathetic nervous system was and how active the parasympathetic was. 100% of people with chronic illness were in fight or flight. So we already had anecdotal, literal evidence of this. But it was like, but that's the piece we're not addressing. And for years, what we would do is tell people to go use more tools and modalities, like, oh, well, stress, every article you read in functional medicine about any condition on the list of causes is always stress. It's usually the first thing they list. And there are even studies that show this. I was reviewing studies on the thyroid last week for a presentation, and it's so cool. The studies have shown that within months prior to the onset of a thyroid disease, there were higher levels of stress and stressful events. It's even coming out in the studies. So all of this to say, no, I didn't just want to band-aid my nervous system either, because I was doing deep breathing, and then I learned grounding, and then I learned about acupuncture, and I went to regular massages because that's supposed to help, and I did Epsom salt baths, and I even listened to relaxing, like meditation, either music or like a guided meditation for deep breathing to help you get into parasympathetic. And it's like, well, my gosh, I would in order to stay in the parasympathetic at this rate, I would just have to do that all the time, because the moment I go back, or within an hour or two of going back into my regular life, there I am back into the same state. So again, it was like, are we really addressing the root cause, or are we just band-aiding and manipulating the body yet again? So that's what had me go to that deeper place. And that's what I was missing was, oh my gosh, but what's controlling the nervous system? And that's where I feel like hardly anybody else talks about. And the nervous system is reactive. So you think about it. I'm not consciously waking up deciding, I think I'll be in fight or flight today. That sounds good. It's something that the body decides, though it's a reaction that happens without conscious knowledge, and usually before we even can have conscious thoughts about it. So if I am living in the sympathetic nervous system, that is so much different than living in the parasympathetic where I'm supposed to live, and then just using fight or flight when I need it, which should be for 20 minutes or less at a time. If you think about it, there's usually not, and unless if in extreme cases, a longer period of time where we're there. And even when there is, even when we are in prolonged states of stress, the moment we are safe, we should be able to regulate back to the parasympathetic. So looking at what is controlling the nervous system, it's reactive. So it's reacting to something. What is it? And I love Bruce Lipton. He's a cellular biologist, and he's done a lot of pioneering in this field for 50 plus years. He has shown that, even in the scientific medical community, they don't believe that genes create illness anymore. They used to, but then there was no correlation statistically between the people who had genes for cancer and the people who ended up getting cancer. People could have the genes, not get cancer. People could not have the genes for cancer and get cancer. So it was that's been disproven 50 plus years ago. Their next theory was that it was the environment that affected the genes and whether you created symptoms or not. So then that's where a lot of people still are to this day in the medical community, as we are controlling the environment around ourselves and in our bodies and outside of our bodies. And that has actually been disproven 20 plus years ago. What they've discovered is that it's not the environment itself, but it's the perception the cell has of its environment that controls genetic behavior and even rewrites our genes. So when I'm talking about in the parasympathetic, we're in growth and repair. We're producing healthy cells. We are literally changing the DNA that's expressed in those cells based on the cells knowing they're in a healthy, safe environment where they can be in resting and digesting mode. In fight or flight, because of the hormones and the signals that go to the cells in survival mode, we are actually changing our DNA to express the DNA we need to survive. And our bodies are good at surviving, and we adapt and maladapt to survive, but not survive and be happy, not survive and be healthy. So while that part of our brain is working to keep us safe, When we're there all the time, it shuts off access for our body to be healthy and for our brains to be happy, to be quite frank. So what is controlling the nervous system? It is our mind. It is our perception, and that comes from unconscious centers in our body. So this can be the suppressed and repressed things we've experienced in our lives. This can be the inner stress and turmoil we have about different things like our insecurities and our fears and our self-doubts. And this can seem really conceptual, so I like to give three analogies to help this become really practical. So I like to think about all illnesses have an effect, or all, we'll call them biological conflicts. All stressful situations have a real effect on our brain. And when our brain decides, I don't have what I need in order to properly handle this, we go into adapting and coping mechanisms. And that's where we turn on the fight or flight system and we begin to make real cellular changes in our body. So depending on how, not consciously, I'm not like thinking to myself, this situation, I think, makes me afraid for my life. I think I'm going to affect this part of the brain and develop a lesion there. It's not conscious, it's automatic, it's biological, it's something your body is doing without your awareness. So every conflict we experience affects a part of our brain, and there are lesions that show up on brain scans in the part of the brain affected. Well, that part of the brain correlates to some part of the body or body function, and with 100% accuracy, that lesion always corresponds to where symptoms are in the body, or a cancer location is in the body, or a growth or nodule, or just an issue. And so what we do is we help people learn how were they perceiving that event that the brain decided it couldn't cope with or couldn't process or couldn't respond to at the time, that threw them into this over adaptation surviving mechanism process. It really is a biological survival program. So we talk about software running the hardware. It's a biological survival program. An example of this, the moment that a woman, I'm a mom, and so I learned this in my journey, the moment that a woman who is a mom, no matter how old her kids are, the moment she experiences a death fright conflict over her child. So this is like the moment they like run into the street and almost get run over, and you're like, it's that moment, like just, which for me was a sledding accident. The moment that happens, our bodies actually create new breast cells in our breast tissue. Hi, Kate. So this is not something we consciously do. That is an example of a biological survival program. I'm not thinking that. I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I hope my child is okay, right? Like, oh my gosh. But my brain says, oh my gosh, you can't process this right now. You don't have what you need. So we're going to create a survival program. So a lesion forms on that part of my brain that actually controls my breast and breast tissue. Now, if I'm increasing cells in my breasts, at some point I've got to reverse that or we're going to have a problem. And this happens from head to toe, anywhere in the body, depending on how we perceive a stressful situation. So the moment I know everything's okay with my daughter, my brain unconsciously goes, okay, you're good. Now we can turn off that survival biological program and we can start a new program called let's reverse those cellular changes so that we can get the body back to normal. Now, what's interesting is there's that conflict phase where I start the survival program. I usually don't have symptoms there. I'm usually not even aware it's happening there. It's not until my body is able to go back in the parasympathetic, my body says, whew, she's okay. My daughter's okay. The sledding accident did not kill her or poke out an eye, thank God it was a miracle. And it was, and even her, she didn't even need stitches. Like she like tore her nose in multiple places. It was so sad. My heart. And, but like by the time we took her to the hospital, her nose put itself back together. And the doctor said she doesn't even need stitches. Her body's already doing it. Let's not give her a bigger scar. I think it's fine. So there was like literally no medical impact. So by that evening, my body's already going, oh, everything's okay. So when we know everything's okay, our body is able to go back into the parasympathetic and we start reversing those cellular changes. Well, how we have to do that is by recruiting fungus or bacteria to break down cells. Or if we've lost cells in our body, which is very common, we thin cells out, we have to replenish our cells, which would be inflammation, heat, moisture. So people all the time, we get acute stuff like colds. I'm going to punch our common, you didn't catch a cold. We're exposed to this stuff all the time. If you think about it in real life, why do some people get the colds and some people don't? And some people are like, I guess I'm immune right now. And then other times it hits you after the rest of the family got sick. Like, it's very fascinating when our brain and our immune systems are prone to illness or not prone to illness. It's actually corresponding to these biological events, and if we're in fight or flight or if we're in the parasympathetic. When we know how to stay in the parasympathetic, we avoid those survival programs. So then we don't have to go and reverse all those changes in the body and create symptoms doing it. So usually, not 100% of the time, but usually symptoms show up at the body's first attempt to heal and reverse those cellular changes. So what most people do and what we're taught in the medical community is like, oh my gosh, there's symptoms. Let me manipulate the body. And what we end up doing if we interrupt the body's ability to complete that healing process is we shove the body back into fight or flight mode because it knows it wasn't able to complete that process, so it just goes into survival. And then we have that's one of the ways we create these ongoing chronic illnesses that get a little bit better when we use some tools, and then they get worse, and then the tools stop working and the symptoms pop up, and it's like very confusing. But as soon as you understand and know how to tell where you're at in your nervous system at every point in time, and to be able to get into the parasympathetic at any point in time, it gives you all the clarity. There's no mystery to any symptom you've ever had. You're able to, with perfect clarity, say, oh, that was the conflict. Here's how my body went into survival. Now I'm going to address that. And as we deal with those conflicts, our perceptions of stress, how we handle stress, how we feel about ourselves. I just read a quote that a challenge will only feel, or a challenge will feel big or small to you based on how big or small you see yourself. That's such a good thing. It's like, if I know I can handle what life is throwing my way, and I can stay in that calm, peaceful, rational thinking place where I know I'm supported, I'm not burnt out all the time and exhausted and overwhelmed, but I'm like, I know I can handle what's going on. I feel supported. I feel healthy. How I approach and experience life is a completely different thing. And that's what gets communicated to our bodies. So what we've discovered, there's 3 areas that are really practical with this when we're working with chronic illness. One is major life changes. So 3 to 6 months before the onset of a chronic illness, like a brand new issue or illness in your body, we have seen that there was a major life change that threw the body into a state of fight or flight. And some people are aware of this because they're like, yeah, it was this trauma, right? I got divorced and 3 months later I had MS. But the majority of people, it is not that obvious, because we're not talking about traumas. We're just talking about changes. And thanks, Jamie. She says, so true. I see this in my practice all the time. And I know, Amber, you do too. It's so clear. So it's usually about 3 months before, but it's usually not something traumatic. And that's why it kind of stays unconscious. A lot of people work through things that are obviously traumatic, But people don't work through things that are not so obviously traumatic. We've had clients that developed their illnesses when they went like 3 months after starting a sports team. It's like you would never say, oh my gosh, their lupus was caused by joining the basketball team. That makes no sense. But when you learn the nervous system, you can start seeing and understanding the mechanism, and it's like clockwork. I can even predict it with clients now. And so what we do is we help them find what was that major life change. And I like to think of major life changes as just pouring water into a jar. So that's why it's not necessarily a trauma. It could be something really small. We stack these major life changes up when we're in the sympathetic. They keep adding up in our nervous system. Well, at some point, I'm going to pour one too many, and the water is going to overflow out of the jar. And this is the new illness. Now, for some people, they start an addiction. For other people, they go into a midlife crisis. For other people, it's some other dysfunctional behavior or pattern. But for people with chronic illnesses, this is our coping mechanism and strategy, unconscious. So that's what the new illness is about. So we help people find what was the major life change, what was that unconscious pattern or program or software that started happening at that point, because it only takes 3 to 6 months for the nervous system to be in sympathetic dominance and have reached its overload point. It's called the allostatic load. It's how much stress I can handle in my nervous system. In other words, it's how big my jar is. I might have a huge jar. You might have a really tiny jar. Some babies, birth is a major life change. Within 3 months after birth, they develop new illnesses. Like they had a tiny itty bitty baby jar. Okay, but for whatever reason, it's kind of predisposed. You could blame genetics or a lot of things for that. But we have the jar we're given when we're born. At some point, that overflows, and we've reached that allostatic load. Now, what we teach people in living in the parasympathetic is it doesn't accumulate. We learn to process and support ourselves and stay in the parasympathetic through every major life change. Therefore, it's very unlikely we would create a new illness. We're still human. We might miss something, but it's very, very rare. And that is incredibly comforting to me. I have a lot of security, because when I had my autoimmune, genetic, and environmental illnesses, every new symptom or every little thing that popped up was so scary. It was like PTSD. Oh my God, is it cancer? Oh my God, what's wrong now? Maybe I'm attacking a new part of my body and I developed a new autoimmune disease. Like, So now it's like, oh, all that fear is gone. And what's beautiful is fear is a trigger for the fight or flight system. So look at our healthcare system today. Fear, 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 fear. And it's a life sentence. And oh my gosh, this, and oh my gosh, that. And it's like, that's keeping people sick. So by understanding our bodies with this understanding of physiology and how they work on a much deeper level, one is it eliminates fear for people, and that is so powerful and so important. The cellular biologist Bruce Lipton, how he talks about this on a cellular level is a cell is either in a state of fear or love. That's how he describes it. And that it either feels safe in its environment or it doesn't feel safe in its environment. And even a cell that is in a container with food that's like healthy for the cell, if it's in a state of fear, it won't eat. It will think that the food is poison. It will act like the food is poison, and it won't nourish itself. It will be in protection mode. So on the cellular level, we are communicating all the time with our cells. So major life changes are one of the areas where we see this at play. The second one is what we call minor triggers. And these are the little things that pop up day to day that are unexpected, that just hook you. You might go into overwhelm. You might be like, man, that really sucks. Somebody might say something to you that's triggering and offensive, and that could be an issue. Maybe you owe more than you thought on your taxes, or your tire blows out, and that's not expected. It's like, great, now I'm off my routine, and now I have to deal with this. So it doesn't change our whole lives, but these pop up all the time. And so what we've discovered is our flare-ups. So if we have gotten rid of some symptoms and then all of a sudden they flare up or they're really worse all of a sudden, this is caused by a minor acute, meaning it happened right in the moment, trigger. And so what I do now is, first of all, I'm catching those in the moment. I'm not powering through like I used to. And so I'm able to work through them in the moment. That's why I don't flare up, but maybe a couple times a year if I miss something. But if I do miss something, I can go back and say, this is weird because I don't have these symptoms, right? So when in the last like 24 hours did something trigger my nervous system back into survival that I missed? And I'm like, oh, that's what it was. Wow, I didn't realize that stressed me out so much. It's usually not a big deal. It's my body that decided that was stressful. It's those unconscious patterns and programs that were triggered. So I work through it, and within minutes, I experience relief. And we teach our clients, look, you don't ever have to have symptoms. If you live in the parasympathetic and you support yourself and you stay there, we don't go into survival, meaning we don't create those cellular survival programs and cellular changes in our body, meaning we don't have to go and reverse them and create symptoms in the healing process. And the third one are chronic stressors. So I like to picture a snow globe. We shake up the snow globe and all the snow, like it's all, shaken up. And I like to think of the snow as our inner turmoil. These are our unconscious fears and doubts and insecurities about ourselves. And when this gets shaken up, this stress, that's what we experience, are these symptoms. So a major life change is a massive shakeup of our snow globe. A minor acute trigger, a little bit less, but still pretty good shakeup. And then we have these ongoing relationships and responsibilities and chronic stressors in our life. And this just rattles our snow globe all the time. And so we never get a rest from this turmoil being, stirred up. And so that gives all of these are like, I like to think of them as like, communications constantly going out to our nervous system saying, you still need to survive, you still need to survive, you still need to survive. And so in my own journey, Jamie, do I have 5 minutes?
You're good. You had it until you're good.
Oh,
I
maybe
don't
an
think we've
hour?
got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think you have an hour.
Perfect. I could talk for days, so I want to be respectful of time. Okay, good. So let me get back to where I was going. Okay, signals, right? Signals that are keeping us in fight or flight. So my example, I had childhood trauma. A lot of holistic people know that there's a connection between trauma and emotions and stress and your health and well-being. And I did so much work on that. And yes, it made a huge difference. But I still had an autoimmune disease. I still had food allergies. I still had genetic disorders I managed daily. So it's like, I just like, that's not quite it. And I found it funny that not all of my clients over years of practicing functional medicine, a lot of them said I didn't have a big trauma. Like they couldn't they couldn't make a connection there. So to me, I'm very logical, black and white. I was raised by a judge, and so it's like, well, if it's not 100% of the time, then like I don't buy it, like it has to be reliable. So for me, I looked once I finally learned how the nervous system worked, I was like, well, what happened in my life 3 to 6 months before I was basically bedridden from this autoimmune disease? And the only thing that in my life it could be was I was performing in a musical and then the musical ended. So for a couple months, I was very close. I was seeing these people like several times a week. You get very close when you're in the performing arts. It's like your musical family. And I had been in several musicals, so I was like, that couldn't be it. And I said, okay, I'll be coachable, right? If that was it, what didn't I cope with deeper? And all of a sudden, it just started flowing. Like I felt that musical was very special to me. I did one more after that, and I was like, it's not the same. I'm done. And I remember feeling and thinking, oh my gosh, I finally fit. That's what I told myself. I finally fit. I found my people. I'm like singing and dancing and like being myself, and it's a lot of fun, and there's so much connection, and they love me, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm finally not the weird one. Like it was the weird one, but I was in a family of weird ones, so it was fine. It's like I finally fit. And so it was like, it was my sense of belonging. I didn't have any of these conscious thoughts. And if you would have asked anybody in my life, did I feel like I didn't belong? They would have said no. Like, that's crazy. She makes friends with everyone she meets. She's up on stage. She's like leading, rooms of people, like I'm very friendly and outgoing. And so what actually happened is that deep down, I believed I didn't belong somewhere in my history. And I created a facade, that's a very triggering word, or a personality, right? Or these strong suits to have me survive in life. And so what I did was I buried that really deep and I covered it up with this personality, right? To make up for it, to make sure I belong. And all of a sudden, when I could see that and I started looking back at my history, can I see that theme through my history? It was everywhere. I said, can I see it all in every area of my life now? And oh my gosh, it was everywhere. And it was like I couldn't see it before. And then when the brain connection happened, I all of a sudden could see that mechanism playing out everywhere. So when we say it's unconscious, it's like hidden from our view. It's in our blind spot. We don't know it, but it's that software running everything. And so I said, of course, I'm in fight or flight. Every part of my life is, oh my gosh, do I belong? And it's working overtime to belong and to people please, to make sure everyone's happy with me, and to make sure I'm a perfectionist and I don't mess up and have to be perfect and all these things. And so all these patterns stemmed from that. So that's one example of how we take a major life change, tie it to that core root, and when we heal the root, the signal to the nervous system stops. That feedback loop is interrupted and it goes away. And that's where we go back to living in the parasympathetic. So my husband, I love his story. I mean, every client has an amazing story. But I love sharing his. He was supposed to be wheelchair bound in his mid-20s, and he's almost 40. And he's a painter and he uses his body all the time. Very rough on, construction crews. They always end up having like arthritis or something because of the wear and tear on their body, and he has none of it. And so it's really magical. What he learned in this work is that 3 months, same time frame, after he got a new job drilling water wells with a very gruff crew, he developed 3 diseases that were they were progressing so quickly that the doctor said, within a few years, you'll be wheelchair bound. You need to get your affairs in order now for that. And as I told you, he's not there. But so it's like, what did he make up then? What didn't he cope with when he got this new job? And what bubbled up from the unconscious place was, I'm not man enough. I'm not enough. And unconsciously, he started this behavior pattern of working himself to death, overworking, never taking breaks, just abusing his body, not listening to his body at all, to prove that he was man enough. Had no idea he was doing this. If you asked an outsider, do you think he's insecure in his manhood? Everyone would say, absolutely not. He's the most manly guy in the room. He's more manly than the show-off manly guys. Like he doesn't even need to show it off, He's just a guy's guy. And I tease him. I'm like, I'm a woman. I don't need to know that about what's happening in your body functions. Thank you. Like, treat me like a lady. No, he's so great. He's amazing. But he dug out this pattern. And that's one of the things, is he can finally listen and take care of his body because he knows he's enough and he can handle anything that comes his way. And when he was finished with his program, I said, oh, how is it? I don't work with my family. So he was working with another coach. Can you tell me about the program now? And he said one-liner. He said, I got that I can handle anything that comes my way. And boy, did he embody manliness, like more than I had ever seen before. I could feel it in him. I'm like, wow, like he changed. And people tell me I've changed. It's like my loved ones that were telling me, you're different now. And my mother, it happened after I was in the parasympathetic. I was at her house and I was thirsty, so I was getting water. And I was getting tap water, which is like insane, right? For knowing, like, she, growing up, she had to buy me all the special water, like not that pure water, but this water, because that's dehydrating, and this, that we have to add these minerals, and it has to be in a glass container, but you know, all this stuff. And it was like in slow motion, she came to me and was like, no, you know, that's tap water. And I was like, oh, it's fine, my body will process anything it doesn't like. I can drink tap water now. And I had forgotten I was ever afraid of water. And so I went and I was like, we were sitting down at the table and I was just eating and drinking and doing my thing. And I didn't quite notice until she spoke up that she went and sat down and she was just quiet for minutes. And when she spoke up, she said, you know, it's like you're not afraid anymore. And my first thought was, well, that's a weird comment. Because it's not in my awareness. It's that gone for me. It's that resolved to the deepest level in my brain, my psyche, my body. And the second thought was, oh my gosh, you're so right. I lived over a decade afraid of my food, afraid of my chemicals, afraid of the water, afraid of missing supplements, afraid of running out, afraid of their quality, afraid of reacting, afraid of my body, just everything, afraid of scented things. And looking back, I cried with her in my illness journey because the world was toxic. And I didn't know what my daughter was going to eat. And I didn't have a daughter, but I'm thinking ahead. I'm like, what are my children and grandchildren going to eat? Like, this is so toxic. There's no bubble for me to escape in. And I would cry with her over this. Totally forgot about it because here I am, just free, living my life, not afraid of water, whatever. And so it just goes to show how powerful those unconscious patterns are, that they just are the way we see life. And when those are taken care of, we just see life in a new way. So let's get back here and see how we want to wrap this up. Okay, so how did I turn on the parasympathetic? One was finding what was signaling my fight or flight system to stay on. What are those unconscious beliefs, fears, insecurities, doubts, identities? I had whole identities wrapped up into my illness and a lot of other things like my performance. Breaking those down and allowing me to be the full version of myself. But there's something about building resilience. So resilience, inner unconscious resilience, is like expanding our jar or our capacity for life and for what we experience and for stress. Stress isn't bad, by the way. Stress strengthens us. It's our perception of stress being bad that creates all the bad things related to stress. There are TED Talks on this. It's really beautiful. If you want to contact me later, I'll send them to you. But the studies are that stress enhances all of our body's functions. We're just not supposed to stay there. And we're also not supposed to interpret stress in a negative way. Oh, I'm so stressed out and it's going to affect me and I can't handle it. And all those things are what cause the negative reactions. So when we know that the sympathetic rush or a stress response is to help us improve our performance, and then we can get right back to the parasympathetic, that is a life of being alive and at peace and in balance and strong. So I like to think of a tree. Trees that are resilient bend, they sway. And guess what? Resilient trees love the wind. Did you guys know this? Oh, I love it. Yes. So you're jiving with this. I say thank you for the comment. So resilient trees love the wind. Why? Because that's how they stimulate and strengthen their roots. So a healthy tree is a resilient, bendable tree. And every wind and thing that comes at it strengthens it. It's a good thing. And that's us when we're resilient. So resilience is the ability to bounce back quickly in times of stress, to bend and not break in times of stress. And when we have and embody, meaning we experience being resilient, that really is the key to living in the parasympathetic. And there's a few ways that we build that. One is actually, excuse my language, slowing the fuck down. Okay. We all think we know how to slow down, and 100% of the people I've worked with do not. In fact, we have exercises where we practice this and being present and being in the moment and getting out of your head that's blah, 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 blah about everything. And they'll say to me, okay, I did it. I'm grounded. And it's like, can you tell you're still really sped up and in your head? And they don't even know how to access it. So it takes practice. And everything we teach like this is like riding a bike. It has to be learned experientially, not from knowledge or concepts, not conceptually. We all know how to ride a bike. It looks really easy. People describe it to us. Sounds really simple. It's not until the first time you get on the bike and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not as simple as I thought it was. I get it up here, but I don't get it. It's not working. That's every single principle we teach has to go from here to all the connections are working. And the beautiful thing about riding a bike is this: when you learn and you get it and it clicks, it's not conscious. It's like you knew it all, you kept trying it, all of a sudden there's this click. And you can never forget something you learn experientially. You can never resort back to old patterns once you have new neural pathways. So that's really cool. So slowing down is the ability to turn on your parasympathetic at any moment in time at conscious will, and to catch and be aware of any time you go out of it. Usually we're in fight or flight for a longer period of time, way before symptoms show up. So for people to actually feel that shift and be like, whoa, I just felt like my heart rate and my this and my that, and like my thoughts speed up. There's so many obvious indicators once you know what they are, that you can actually get right back into the parasympathetic before symptoms ever show up. So slowing down, being grounded, being present, living from your heart and intuition, not from your head reacting to everything and judging everything and beating yourself up and being hard on yourself. I know you guys. I know people with chronic illness. Y'all do that. So that's number one. Number two is learning to put ourselves, guesses, first, not last, because we're the caretakers of everyone else. We're the doers. We're usually high achievers. And so we come last. And it's not like we do it out of good hearts, but here's the thing. When we come last and are burnt out, everyone gets the worst version of us. Usually we're resentful or bitter about everything we have to take on. We're overwhelmed. We don't feel well. We are on burnout. I love this quote from Rumi. He said, never give out of the depths of your well, but only from your overflow. When I read that, I was like, okay, that's like totally different than the way I live, but that is life in the parasympathetic. Is I am filled up and overflowing, then I am the best version of me. People get me based on my commitments, my integrity, my character, my values, my love, my compassion, my generosity, which is genuine, not like I'm doing this for you, why don't you ever do it, all that. It's like the best version of me. And then I like myself and feel good about myself because I feel I have the capacity to be me and to serve and to be outward focused. And so putting ourselves first in practical ways, keeping ourselves on our calendars, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes a day, the most important time of the day to slow down, connect, be present, and do an activity we enjoy that's really simple. So that's number two. Number three is learning to parent ourselves, because we take tons of shortcuts, not in the big ways. We have integrity in the big areas. It's usually all the areas that don't have to do with anybody else and just have to do with us. I do the dishes for my guests in my home, but do I do the dishes for me? Do I wash out my water cup? Do I stop at stop signs? Yes, if I'm driving with somebody in the car. No, if I'm not. So it's like I am getting the short end of the stick, Jamie. I know, I see it. So we pick really simple ways that we take shortcuts, like skipping flossing our teeth. Doesn't take too many more seconds. But it does matter because I used to think it doesn't matter, it's just me. It doesn't matter, it's just one day. It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And that was me telling myself and my nervous system, to whom we cannot lie to, it knows, you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter. And I would never treat anyone else that way. But I am okay to treat myself that way. We teach that each of those little choices is where we build snow in the snow globe. It's not the past traumas, not the past events, not the people in our lives. It's not motherhood. It's not being married. It's not having jobs. It's not the government. It's not social media. Those just shake up the snow globe. But what's inside is up to me. And that is also reprogrammable and changeable. So I like to think every time we parent ourselves and make a resilient choice instead of a self-defeating shortcut, that builds stress. This builds peace. This tells my nervous system something ain't right. You're out of integrity with yourself. It creates a symptom. Every time I make a resilient choice, I step up. I have integrity, even in the small things, especially in the small things. It's like depositing into your health savings account. It's building a really big buffer. It's replacing the snow with glitter. So the next time that snow globe gets shaken up, if I have glitter, meaning I know I'm okay, I'm organized, I support myself, my cup is full, I can handle this. I'm gonna perceive life through that filter and that lens, and my body is also gonna follow suit and respond based on how I see life. So we also look at those stressors, like I talked about, and this is part of how we help people build that resilience so that they can be a medical tree that loves the wind. And so that's what's so cool. So I have one more analogy and then we'll wrap up. Since it's 3, you guys have been so great. Here's life through the sympathetic. Okay, life situation is I'm driving in my car, trying to get to work. Not sure where my next meal's coming from for my family, but I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get the paycheck. I'm going to come home on my way home, buy groceries, and, give them dinner. And my car breaks down. Oh, I'm going to lose my job. I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. I won't have a job. All my credit cards are maxed out. I literally don't know what to do. Okay, same scenario of my car breaking down through the lens of the parasympathetic. And I can always feel that in my body when I say that scenario. It's like, oh, the stress. Through the parasympathetic, it's as if I have $1 trillion in the bank. I've got this huge buffer. So if my car breaks down, where does my brain go? Probably should call the neighbor. Maybe for $1,000, they'll go pick up dinner, have it for me. I guess I'm not keeping this job. I'll get another job when I'm ready. Maybe I'll, go home and look at that. Who can I call to come pick me up? Maybe I'll just buy a new car. I've been wanting one anyway. It's like boom, 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 boom. I'm in solutions. So people have a hard time experientially learning this. So I like to give that analogy. It's not the money that's different, but you guys can see how based on what I have in here, my response is different, and I see and interact physically. How I feel and how my brain thinks is different when I know I'm okay. I have everything I need to handle anything that comes my way, and I can stay in my solution-oriented part of the brain, versus when I'm like stunned and in stress mode, and usually my brain just shuts down and it says I don't know what to do. And then I feel all these feelings, and it's like a freeze, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn is real. It's real. So that's a good analogy. So for everybody, what Jamie always encourages us to have an offer, to give back to you guys. So my company wanted to give 2 sessions to dive into this and actually walk you guys through 2 unconscious processes. One is, and there is a replay available here till 8 p.m. and then you can catch the beginning. And also, Jamie, I don't know if you can post the link, but if you subscribe to the community that Jamie is an amazing leader of, all of this is in there too. So, and I will post a link. I'll tell you guys, it's chronicillnesssolution.com/apply. I'm putting it in the comments. There's 2 sessions we want to offer to you guys that dive into that unconscious place. One, we look at your major life change and we find the exact program thing you didn't cope with, and you will see it everywhere. And when you see it, then you can do something about it. It is a rewiring process just to become aware of this stuff. Yes, we can work on it, but just becoming aware of it is step 1. And the second one is we're going to look at the chronic stressors and have a good size list of what are those unconscious patterns that are stimulating fight or flight. The beautiful part is that's one side. The other side is looking at who do you get to be when those are gone? What does life look like without those insecurities, doubts, and fears? And we create that. So your brain can start identifying patterns and start operating out of that new space. So that's what we're going to do for you guys. And you can schedule that online with us. Chronic Illness Solution, singular.com/apply, and our calendar is on there. So thanks for letting me talk longer. Do you guys have any questions, or is this pretty clear?
This is amazing, McCall. I am so excited about you being part of our collective because I resonate so deeply with you and always have. And so I am so honored to have you here in this space. One thing I wanted to ask, so when we talk about those situations where we're in, so I'm just thinking of the person who is still in that constant state where they're shaking up those snow globes, right? And it's that constant state that they're not able to actually release or get away from because it's a constant state of almost trauma. I'm thinking of a couple of people. For example, I have a client who literally spent her child's infancy resuscitating him every single day. He was so sick, she would have to resuscitate him like sometimes multiple times a day. And it happened throughout 6 months of his life. It actually for a full year. It wasn't every day for the whole year, but for at least the first 6 months, it was every single day. And if you can imagine going to your infant and finding him not breathing and resuscitating them, it's just terrifying. And what that would do to your own heart, right?
Yes.
So that being said, the child is now older, but he is still have these health issues. He was born without some organs and things like that. But for him, he's still such on the verge of perfectly healthy to absolutely, on his deathbed, like any moment. And so I'm just interested to see, like, is this what you're saying is you're going to be able to take the person like that and say, this is how we're going to regulate the nervous system within these situations?
I love your question. I love your question. Questions are so great because it shows how we are conditioned to think about what stress is. Mm-hmm. So when we say, okay, what is stress, right? Everyone says, oh, it's stress. I'm always like, oh, really? Like which one? What unconscious mechanism showed up based on which stressor? And so in language, we try to distinguish stress from stressor. So stressor is what shakes up the snow globe. We experience those stressors throughout our entire life ongoingly. So this is not about changing the fact that life is up and down and full of stressors. trees with wind, right? So it's basically like the tree saying that an ongoing, so that's a chronic stressor if it's ongoing in her life. It's just one of the 3 stressors. So that is just something that's like wind to a tree. It's what is the resilience of the tree. So what we teach is stress is internal. It's our own ability to regulate, to feel, to process, to let go of emotions, to support ourselves in our life stressors. And yes, you can navigate life stressors through the parasympathetic. And that's what the power is. And it's really, really good. We work with most everybody we work with has PTSD or CPTSD. And CPTSD is called complex, right? And it's like ongoing over time. It works the same. We don't do anything different for these people. We do the same process as everyone else. So what we're doing is we're basically making the tree healthy so that the winds can actually strengthen its roots. And so I love your question because it goes to show how everybody in society sees it, that it's the events that are so triggering. It's a whole nother topic that I could talk about for probably 3 hours, but we actually show people the neuroscience behind where our thoughts, emotions, and reactions come from. Mm-hmm. And it's not the event itself. It goes through a filter of our beliefs that create our perception, and those beliefs trigger all of these chemical reactions. And so all of these beliefs we have are like negative. I'm not good enough. Am I doing enough? I'm not capable of handling this. I'm not smart enough. Oh my God, it's like that's our default mode from the survival part of our brain. We all have the same default negative programming. So as we deal with that, she can be present in the moment. Doesn't mean those uncomfortable feelings won't come up, but she can feel, process, and let them go moment by moment by moment by moment. So the trauma is actually in a totally different part of our brain than events. And when we can get rid of the trauma, we can actually see these events from a new place and really show up from the best versions of us. And it doesn't mean life is easy, but it means we are resilient. And then these won't stack up for her because you see there's this whole history, even in you sharing it. It's like this whole history makes this bigger. So she's not in that one moment with her son. She's in this whole history of unprocessed stuff. And that's why it all comes flooding back in the moment. So we allow the body and ourselves to clear out all of this. It's just one more little pour. And it doesn't make it easy. My heart goes out to her. If we work together, I will cry with her, I'm sure, because I'm like that. But the experience does not have to be what it is from a place of fight or flight.
Right. It's so freeing to hear, this type of mindset and knowledge, for people, because there is so much trauma in the world right now. There is so much happening. There's so much happening just in relationships and our society. And we are constantly faced in this turmoil. Turn on the news for 10 seconds, I mean, it's constant ongoing, and trust is being broken, and within systems everywhere. And, even in the medical community, trust is getting broken, and there's so much happening. So this is such a powerful message, and I'm so excited that you brought it today. I'm so excited that you're here. And I can't wait for more people to get a hold of this information and get a hold of you, because it's really just a new way of healing your whole life. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring alternative healthcare solutions to the world, is because I wanted them to see that it's not just the body. We're not just treating symptoms. It is connecting that mind, body, spirit, the whole mind, and really going in deep and finding those root causes, like you so clearly spelled out. So I'm so excited. This is fantastic. I won't take up the whole time. Does anybody else have any questions for her? Kate, did you have any questions?
If not, I had one story pop up and then we'll wrap up. Thanks for letting me talk. So per trauma, the story popped in my head. So we worked with a woman who had been raped. That is so common now. and very common trauma in our world. And so she was married. This had happened like 11 plus years prior. She'd been married for a long time. And the effects of it were like lingering, like it showed up. There were triggers in her marriage. There were ways she saw men as pedophiles. So she was in a career working with men. It was always awkward. She'd never go out to the social functions, etc. We worked kind of the brain science I was talking about these beliefs. We worked with her in one session on one core belief she had. And not that I always expect this to happen in one session, but she came back the week later. We were checking in, how are you doing? Did you, what did you notice shift and change? What's still there? And she said, oh, it was magical. She said, I went out to a social function with my company, and I saw men as men and not as pedophiles. Like how I saw men changed in this 1 week from just switching one belief about herself. So the rape is not where the trauma lies. It's in what our brains make it mean that we drag with us through our whole lives. So a guy asked her to dance. She danced with him. It was great. She found herself speaking up for these deals because usually other people would compete with her. And she was kind of a doormat. And all of a sudden, it's like she could speak up and she could get the deals that she wanted at work. And so we asked her, okay, so do you have, let's talk about the trauma we're working to heal. Do you have any emotional pain, or what is your emotional pain that's still related to your rape and that event and what happened? And she said, I don't have any. She said, I've thought of this so many times this week, like I wish I could drug up something. And she said, I know what happened. I can tell you what happened, but I'm as neutral and as peaceful as like talking about a movie. I'm not traumatized and in the emotions of it. I recognize their facts, but I can move on. So she got herself back in that. So just to speak to, is it the surrounding events that's happening that's causing these reactions in us? No. It's those inner programs and negative beliefs that we have that we carry with us. And those just get triggered and activated in these life circumstances. So I just wanted to share that as an example. Like some people say you can never get over something like that. And it's just not true.
So explain to me, how come every time I hear you talk, I get chills all over my body?
Oh, I love it.
I'm like,
I love your work too. So
Beautiful.
powerful. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to put my email too in the comments, info@Chronic Illness Solution. If you guys have questions, you just want to talk, let me know. You're so welcome. And I appreciate your guys' listening.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. See
Bye.
you probably around 5. All right. Bye.